dedicate. Now that things have changed for Kyle, his mother needs...
For the next 3 days, I want you to experiment with something that may sound simple, but it has the power to change the way you feel about yourself and the direction of your life. It's about the way you talk to yourself, not the words you say out loud to others, but the silent dialogue happening in your mind every single day. The way we talk to ourselves is the foundation of how we experience life, and often that inner dialogue is filled with criticism, judgment, and negative assumptions. When you constantly repeat to yourself that you are not good enough, that you are failing, or that you can't handle what's in front of you, it becomes more than just words. It becomes your reality. That's why shifting your inner dialogue is such an essential step toward building a healthier mind and a stronger sense of self. If you keep feeding your brain with discouraging thoughts, it will begin to filter the world through that lens, and even opportunities will feel like threats or burdens. By consciously deciding to change this conversation, you open up a space for encouragement, compassion, and belief to take root. The first step in this shift is noticing the voice that has become so automatic you don't even realize it's there. Many people carry on with their day unaware of how harshly they are speaking to themselves because it feels natural. It might be something as subtle as sighing when you forget something and muttering, "I'm so stupid," or rolling your eyes in the mirror and thinking, "I look awful today." These tiny comments may not seem important, but together they create a soundtrack in your mind that sets the tone for how you feel about yourself. Once you start catching these thoughts in the moment, you realize how often you are tearing yourself down without even trying. After you become aware of your inner critic, the next step is to challenge it. Instead of letting the negative thoughts sit there as if it's a fact, you ask yourself, is this really true? Or is it just my fear talking? Most of the time, it's just a conditioned habit, not reality. For example, if you think, "I always fail," ask yourself if that's genuinely accurate. You'll find that it's not true. You've succeeded in many areas, but your mind is trained to focus on the failures. This questioning weakens the grip of the negative voice and makes room for a more balanced perspective to emerge. When you replace those harsh words with supportive ones, you begin to notice an immediate difference in your energy. Saying to yourself, "I'm capable, I can figure this out," feels entirely different than saying, "I'm hopeless." It's not about ignoring difficulties or pretending everything is perfect. It's about creating a mental environment where you give yourself permission to keep going instead of shutting down. Encouraging self-talk doesn't erase challenges, but it gives you the strength and confidence to face them with clarity rather than fear. Shifting your inner dialogue is also about building consistency. It's not enough to do it once in a while when you feel down. Just like a negative inner voice became strong because you repeated it often, your positive voice will only take hold if you practice it regularly. Each time you correct a harsh thought and replace it with a kinder one, you are training your brain to take a new path. Over time, this new path becomes more natural, and your mind begins to default to encouragement rather than criticism. Another important aspect of this practice is understanding that your inner dialogue influences your external behavior. When you speak to yourself kindly, you carry yourself differently, you walk with more confidence, you engage with others more openly, and you're willing to take risks because you believe in your ability to handle the outcome. On the other hand, if you constantly criticize yourself, you shrink back, second, guess your decisions, and avoid opportunities out of fear of failure. By shifting the words you use inside, you reshape the way you move through the outside world. It's also worth recognizing how this change impacts your emotional health. Negative self-talk fuels anxiety, depression, and stress because it convinces you that you are powerless or inadequate. Positive self-talk, on the other hand, calms your nervous system and creates space for optimism. It tells your body and mind that you are safe, capable, and moving forward. This doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy, but it means you are no longer fighting a war with yourself while trying to handle life's demands. The more you practice shifting your inner dialogue, the more resilient you become. Challenges that used to knock you down start to feel like opportunities to grow because your self-talk reminds you that you have the ability to adapt. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, you're motivated by belief. That inner shift may be invisible to others at first, but over time it radiates outward in the way you show up, the choices you make, and the persistence you display when things get hard. Shifting your inner dialogue also creates alignment between how you want to be and how you see yourself. Many people have dreams, goals, and visions of what they want their life to look like, but they never move toward them because their inner voice says they aren't worthy or capable. By speaking to yourself in a way that supports your goals, you begin to bridge the gap between who you are now and who you are becoming. The words you use act as a guide, pushing you to take small actions that add up to meaningful progress. Ultimately, the choice to shift your inner dialogue is an act of self-respect. It's deciding that you will no longer be your own harshest critic, but instead your greatest source of support. It's deciding that the words you feed yourself will no longer drain your energy, but will strengthen your spirit. And it's understanding that the way you talk to yourself shapes not just how you feel in the moment, but the entire course of your life moving forward. When the day begins, the very first words you say to yourself set the tone for everything that follows. Waking up and immediately focusing on exhaustion, dread, or stress plants negativity before your feet even touch the ground. That single thought of, "I don't want to do this," can cascade into hours of low energy and avoidance. Shifting your morning mindset is not about pretending your responsibilities are easy, but about giving yourself a starting point of strength. When you rise and tell yourself, "I have what it takes to get through today," you anchor your mind in capability rather than defeat, and that simple adjustment influences how you handle each moment afterward. Your mornings are powerful because they represent a fresh beginning, an opportunity to reset no matter how yesterday unfolded. Many people wake up already carrying the weight of yesterday's mistakes or disappointments, but your inner dialogue in those first minutes can either chain you to the past or free you to start anew. Saying to yourself, "Today is a chance to move forward," reframes your perspective. It acknowledges that the slate is not permanently stained by what has already happened, and instead, you can begin with a mindset of renewal. This is the gift of the morning, the chance to begin again, and your words either unlock that gift or waste it. It is also important to recognize that the morning is when your brain is at its most impressionable. After hours of rest, your mind is more open to suggestion, which is why the thoughts you choose first carry so much weight. If the first thought is critical, it sets off a spiral that feels difficult to break. But if the first thought is empowering, it gives you momentum that carries throughout the day. This is why athletes, leaders, and high performers often use morning affirmations. They understand that those words don't just sound nice, they condition the brain to operate from a place of strength. The energy you create in the morning affects the way you tackle challenges. If you begin the day convinced that you are already drained, every task feels heavier, and even small inconveniences feel overwhelming. But when you tell yourself that you are capable of handling what comes your way, the same challenges appear more manageable. It doesn't mean the day magically transforms into something easy, but your perspective shifts from resistance to readiness. You begin to see problems as puzzles to solve rather than as walls blocking your path, and that change in attitude makes all the difference in how much you accomplish. Starting the morning with a mindset reset also creates emotional stability. A negative inner dialogue fuels irritability, impatience, and frustration, which often spills out onto others throughout the day. In contrast, beginning with empowering self-talk allows you to approach people and situations with calmness and resilience. The world will still bring frustrations, but you meet them with steadiness rather than being immediately thrown off balance. That sense of inner control comes from a deliberate choice to begin the day by affirming your own strength. Another benefit of consciously shaping your morning thoughts is how it impacts your confidence. When you remind yourself at the start of the day that you have the ability to move through whatever comes, you create an internal foundation that supports decision-making. Instead of second-guessing every move, you trust your capacity to figure things out as you go. That trust grows stronger each day you practice, until it becomes second nature to see yourself as capable rather than fragile. These small affirmations in the morning are not about ignoring reality. They don't deny the existence of stress, hardship, or heavy responsibilities. Instead, they are about preparing yourself to face them with a balanced perspective. Saying, "I have what it takes," doesn't mean the workload disappears. It means you acknowledge the weight of the day and simultaneously affirm your ability to carry it. This balanced mindset prevents you from being crushed by circumstances and keeps you steady as you navigate whatever unfolds. When you set your morning tone with constructive self-talk, you also prevent the mind from slipping into automatic negativity. Many people don't even realize they've developed a habit of starting the day with defeat. They grab their phone, check their messages, and immediately feel overwhelmed. By interrupting this cycle with intentional words, you regain control of your thoughts instead of letting external triggers control them. You give yourself the gift of beginning from a place of strength rather than reaction. The practice of resetting your morning mindset builds momentum over time. The more often you repeat it, the more naturally it becomes part of your routine. After several days, your brain starts to anticipate those positive affirmations as part of waking up. What once felt forced begins to feel natural, and eventually it becomes the default. This is how a simple experiment of 3 days can grow into a long-term habit that transforms not only how you feel each morning, but how you live each day. Shaping your morning mindset is ultimately about reclaiming ownership over your day before the world has a chance to take it from you. It is about beginning with strength rather than letting circumstances dictate your energy. By deciding how you will speak to yourself when you rise, you create a foundation of resilience, focus, and belief that sustains you through challenges and guides you toward progress. When you encounter mistakes, the immediate reaction for many people is to fall into a cycle of self-blame and harsh judgment. Thoughts like, "I always mess things up," or "I can't do anything right," become the automatic response. This type of thinking doesn't just describe the mistake, it defines you by it. But when you learn to reframe mistakes as part of a larger process, the experience shifts from being a label of failure to being a lesson in progress. Reframing allows you to take something painful or frustrating and transform it into a stepping stone that helps you grow stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the next challenge. A mistake is not the end of your journey. It is evidence that you are on a journey at all. People who never attempt anything beyond their comfort zone may avoid mistakes, but they also avoid growth. Each time you try, you put yourself at risk of stumbling, and that risk is what leads to development. Reframing mistakes means reminding yourself that the act of trying, even when imperfect, is what sets you apart from staying stagnant. Without mistakes, there is no practice, and without practice, there is no mastery. Another perspective to hold is that mistakes reveal valuable information that success cannot. When everything goes smoothly, you may not notice the details that matter most, but when something breaks down, you are forced to examine it more closely. This process teaches you about your weaknesses, your blind spots, and the areas that need more attention. Far from being proof of inadequacy, mistakes become feedback, signals pointing you toward what to adjust so you can improve. The more you can see mistakes through this lens, the less you fear them, and the more you use them as tools for advancement. It is also important to remember that everyone makes mistakes, even the people you admire most. The difference between those who achieve success and those who give up is not the absence of errors, but the way they respond to them. Some use mistakes as a reason to stop, convincing themselves they aren't cut out for their goals. Others use mistakes as fuel, recognizing that each misstep is part of the path toward refinement. Reframing your mistakes allows you to join the group that uses every setback as momentum instead of as a wall. A powerful way to reinforce this mindset is through the language you use when speaking to yourself after a mistake. Instead of saying, "I failed," you can say, "I learned something new about how this doesn't work." Instead of saying, "I ruined everything," you can say, "This is not the outcome I wanted, but it shows me how to adjust for the future." These small shifts in language create massive shifts in how you experience the moment. The words you use shape whether the mistake drains your energy or contributes to your growth. When you reframe mistakes, you also strengthen your resilience. Life will always bring obstacles, and perfection is not a realistic expectation. If you tie your self-worth to flawless performance, then every mistake feels like a collapse of your identity. But if you view mistakes as natural checkpoints on the way forward, they no longer threaten your sense of self. You can stumble, recover, and continue without losing confidence because you understand that your value does not depend on getting everything right. This perspective also opens up more creativity. When you stop punishing yourself for mistakes, you feel safer to experiment, to test new ideas, and to step outside the lines of what you already know. Fear of mistakes limits innovation, but freedom from that fear invites discovery. Reframing errors as experiments that provide data allows you to embrace trial and error as part of the creative process. Some of the greatest achievements in history were born from repeated mistakes that eventually revealed the right solution. Reframing mistakes further helps reduce the emotional burden you carry. Instead of feeling shame or guilt that weighs you down, you replace those emotions with curiosity. You begin to ask, what can I learn from this? Rather than, what's wrong with me? This subtle change lightens your mental load and prevents mistakes from turning into heavy anchors that keep you stuck. Curiosity moves you forward, while shame keeps you circling the same place. Another benefit is that reframing mistakes allows you to connect more deeply with others. When you stop expecting perfection from yourself, you stop demanding it from those around you. You become more compassionate, more forgiving, and more understanding because you recognize that everyone is learning as they go. This builds stronger relationships and creates environments where growth is encouraged rather than stifled by fear of judgment. The process of reframing mistakes into lessons is not something you practice once and master instantly. It is a daily effort to catch the critical voice, to shift the story, and to remind yourself that mistakes are not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of your willingness to grow. Each time you choose to see mistakes in this way, you strengthen a mindset that will carry you through challenges and keep you moving toward your goals with confidence and perseverance. Speaking to yourself with compassion is one of the most powerful habits you can cultivate, yet it is often the most neglected. Many people treat themselves in ways they would never treat someone they care about, using words filled with criticism, impatience, and disappointment. This pattern becomes so familiar that it feels normal, but the damage it causes is profound. When you constantly attack yourself with harsh language, you reinforce feelings of inadequacy and doubt. On the other hand, when you deliberately practice speaking to yourself with the same kindness and patience you would offer a loved one, you begin to build an inner environment that supports growth rather than hinders. The essence of compassionate self-talk is recognizing your own humanity. Just as you understand that your friends and family are not perfect and that they deserve empathy when they make mistakes, you must extend that same recognition to yourself. Compassionate words acknowledge that imperfection is not failure. It is simply part of being human. When you remind yourself of this truth, you create space to move forward instead of staying trapped in cycles of guilt and self-punishment. Compassion becomes the bridge that allows you to recover quickly from setbacks and keep progressing without carrying unnecessary emotional weight. Practicing this habit also strengthens self-trust. When you respond to yourself with kindness instead of cruelty, you send the message that you can rely on your inner voice for support. Without this, your own thoughts become a hostile environment, and it is difficult to thrive when you feel constantly attacked by yourself. But when you know that even in your worst moments, your inner dialogue will be steady, gentle, and constructive, you develop a deep sense of safety within. That safety builds confidence, because you no longer fear your own reaction to mistakes or challenges. Compassionate self-talk doesn't mean excusing poor choices or ignoring areas where growth is needed. Instead, it reframes the way you address those moments. Instead of saying, "I can't believe I did that, I'm so worthless," compassionate self-talk says, "That wasn't my best decision, but I can learn from it and do better next time." Both statements acknowledge the mistake, but one destroys your spirit while the other supports your growth. This distinction is what makes compassionate language so powerful. It corrects without crushing and guides without shaming. When you practice speaking to yourself with kindness, you also notice an improvement in your emotional regulation. Harsh inner dialogue fuels anxiety, anger, and sadness because it convinces you that you are failing. Compassionate words, on the other hand, calm your nervous system and allow you to approach difficulties with a clearer mind. Instead of spiraling into panic or frustration, you remind yourself that you are capable of handling the moment. This shift doesn't erase challenges, but it gives you the stability to face them with patience and resilience. Another benefit of practicing compassionate self-talk is that it sets the tone for how others treat you. When you consistently devalue yourself in your own mind, it becomes easier for others to follow that example. But when you speak to yourself with respect and encouragement, you naturally project an aura of self-worth that influences how people respond to you. Compassion toward yourself creates boundaries, silently communicating that you expect to be treated with the same level of respect that you give yourself. Compassion also fuels perseverance. When you are harsh with yourself, it is easy to give up because the weight of criticism drains your motivation. But when you encourage yourself with supportive words, you create the energy to keep trying even when progress is slow. Instead of telling yourself to quit because you failed once, compassionate self-talk reminds you that growth takes time and effort, and that each attempt is moving you closer to where you want to be. This encouragement keeps you moving forward instead of abandoning your goals. Over time, the practice of compassionate self-talk begins to change your identity. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who is constantly falling short, you start to see yourself as someone who is learning, growing, and capable of improvement. This shift in identity is subtle but powerful because the way you define yourself influences the choices you make. When you believe you are worthy of compassion and growth, you naturally make decisions that align with that belief. Compassionate self-talk also creates a ripple effect in your relationships. The more patience and empathy you extend to yourself, the easier it becomes to extend it to others. You stop expecting perfection from the people around you and begin to offer them the same understanding you give yourself. This makes your interactions healthier and more supportive, strengthening your connections and reducing unnecessary conflict. Ultimately, compassionate self-talk is about creating a partnership with yourself instead of a battle. Life already brings enough external challenges. You do not need to add an internal war on top of them. By speaking kindly to yourself, you ensure that your inner voice becomes a source of strength rather than a source of pain. Over time, this inner kindness builds a foundation of resilience, peace, and self-respect that supports you in every area of life. At the end of the day, the thoughts you choose to focus on carry as much weight as the ones you begin with. Many people climb into bed replaying everything that went wrong, the tasks left unfinished, and the moments they wish they could redo. This habit of closing the day with self-criticism robs you of rest and plants seeds of stress that linger into the next morning. But when you practice ending your day with peace, you give your mind permission to release what has already passed and restore itself for what lies ahead. The way you speak to yourself at night becomes the final message your brain holds onto before sleep, and that message has the power to either drain or replenish you. Choosing peace at the end of the day means shifting your focus from what didn't get done to what you did accomplish. Even if it wasn't everything you had planned, the fact that you showed up and moved forward is something worth acknowledging. Saying to yourself, "I showed up today and did my best with what I had," allows you to honor your effort rather than punish yourself for imperfection. This perspective nurtures a sense of progress, even when progress feels small, and it keeps you from carrying the weight of unfinished tasks into your rest. Nighttime reflection is also a powerful opportunity to practice gratitude. Instead of cataloging your failures, you can direct your thoughts toward what you are thankful for, whether it's a small victory, a kind interaction, or simply the strength to make it through the day. Gratitude softens the harsh edges of the day and fills your mind with reminders of goodness, which helps create a calming environment for rest. Ending the day with a focus on what went right changes the emotional tone of your evening and prepares you to wake up with a lighter spirit. When you remind yourself at night that tomorrow is another chance, you break free from the cycle of perfectionism. So often, the reason people feel restless is because they think the day as unfinished tasks define them. But choosing to say, "I'll try again tomorrow," is an act of release. It acknowledges that while there may be more to do, your worth is not tied to a completed checklist. This mindset allows you to close the day without guilt and approach the next one with renewed energy instead of carrying exhaustion forward. Ending the day with peace also nurtures your physical health. Stressful self-talk at night disrupts sleep, which leads to fatigue, irritability, and poor focus the next day. On the other hand, calming and supportive thoughts help quiet the nervous system, making it easier to fall asleep and stay asleep. Rest is where your body and mind repair themselves, and the words you feed yourself before bed determine whether that rest is restorative or restless. A peaceful nighttime dialogue becomes a gift you give to your future self. Another benefit of focusing on peace at the end of the day is the way it trains your mind to value consistency over perfection. Life rarely goes exactly as planned, and measuring yourself only by whether you completed everything sets you up for constant disappointment. By ending your day with thoughts like, I kept moving forward, and that matters, you remind yourself that consistency builds more progress than perfection ever could. This perspective protects your motivation and prevents burnout by encouraging you to keep going steadily rather than chasing impossible standards. Ending your day with peace also strengthens your ability to practice self-forgiveness. Everyone makes mistakes during the day, saying the wrong thing, making a poor choice, or missing an opportunity. If you carry those mistakes into the night, they turn into burdens that follow you into the next day. But if you choose to forgive yourself before bed, you allow the day to end without those weights. Saying, I didn't get everything right today, but I forgive myself and I will try again, gives you the freedom to start fresh when the sun rises. This practice of peaceful closure at night also influences how you wake up. If you go to sleep with a restless, critical mind, you wake up already drained, feeling like you're starting behind. But when you end the day by affirming your effort and releasing guilt, you wake up lighter and more focused. Ending the day well sets the foundation for beginning the next one with strength. The cycle of negativity is broken, and a healthier cycle of calm evenings and energized mornings takes its place. Peaceful self-talk at night also protects your sense of self-worth. If you let your mind dwell on everything unfinished or imperfect, you teach yourself that your value depends on achievement. But when you affirm your effort and accept that you are enough regardless of the day's outcome, you remind yourself that your worth is not conditional. This internal reassurance is vital because it grounds you in stability, even when external results are unpredictable. Finally, ending your day with peace builds resilience for the long run. Life will always bring more work, more challenges, and more responsibilities. You cannot control the endless demands, but you can control the way you close each day. By choosing peace, you equip yourself with the strength to continue showing up, to recover quickly from disappointments, and to face the next day with clarity. The words you whisper to yourself in those quiet moments before sleep become a source of restoration that fuels everything you do. When you decide to test the power of kind self-talk for just 3 days, you give yourself an opportunity to see how quickly the mind begins to shift when fed with encouragement instead of criticism. 3 days may not sound like much, but it is long enough for you to notice differences in your mood, your energy, and even the way you respond to challenges. By committing to this short experiment, you remove the pressure of needing to change everything all at once. Instead, you allow yourself to try something new for a brief period, which feels achievable and manageable. This small window of time creates space for you to prove to yourself that words really do matter. During these 3 days, you start to notice how your thoughts influence your emotions almost instantly. When you choose to replace a negative phrase with a supportive one, your body responds with more calmness and less tension. If you usually begin the day saying, I'm already behind, but instead you remind yourself, I can handle what's in front of me, you notice that your stress eases. The mind listens to the language you give it, and in just a few days of consistent positive input, you begin to see that the stories you tell yourself have a direct impact on how you feel. This short trial also reveals how self-talk shapes your behavior. Negative words make you hesitant, doubtful, and slow to act, while supportive words give you the courage to move forward even when things are uncertain. Within 3 days, you may find that you approach situations differently, not because the situations changed, but because your perspective did. A task that once felt overwhelming feels more doable simply because you reminded yourself that you are capable. This change in behavior shows you that shifting your self-talk is not abstract. It produces real, tangible differences in your daily life. Another powerful effect you notice in this 3-day experiment is how your resilience grows. Life will still bring challenges, interruptions, and mistakes, but instead of spiraling into frustration, you remind yourself that you can adjust and keep going. For example, when something doesn't go as planned, instead of thinking, here we go again, I never get this right, You say, "This is another chance to learn and improve." That small change keeps you moving forward instead of shutting down, even in a short span of time. This resilience becomes evident, and you realize that your inner dialogue can either strengthen or weaken your ability to persevere. The 3-day practice also highlights the connection between self-talk and energy. Negative words drain your motivation before you even begin, but positive words create momentum. When you consistently encourage yourself, you notice you feel lighter, more willing to take action, and less weighed down by doubts. By the 3rd day, you may realize that the things you once delayed or avoided feel less intimidating, simply because you changed the way you approach them in your mind. That extra energy comes not from external circumstances, but from the way you fuel yourself internally. In addition, this short commitment helps you see how much of your inner dialogue has been automatic and unnoticed. When you start paying attention for 3 days, you suddenly become aware of how often you criticize yourself without thinking. You catch phrases like, "I can't do this," or "I'm terrible at that," and realize how frequently they appear in your thoughts. This awareness alone is transformative, because once you see the pattern, you have the power to interrupt it. 3 days of noticing and correcting your words shine a light on habits that may have gone unchecked for years. Another key discovery in this process is how quickly your self-perception begins to change. After 3 days of consistently replacing harsh thoughts with supportive ones, you start to see yourself in a more balanced and compassionate light. You recognize not only your flaws, but also your strengths. You begin to believe that you are capable of handling challenges rather than assuming you will fail. This shift in identity may feel subtle, but it is powerful because it lays the foundation for long-term confidence and self-respect. These 3 days also give you a glimpse of how different life feels when your mind becomes your ally rather than your enemy. Instead of feeling like you are battling yourself while trying to handle external demands, you feel supported from within. This inner partnership makes daily struggles feel less heavy because you no longer have to fight on 2 fronts. The relief of having your own words on your side creates a sense of peace that can't be overstated. Even in such a short time, the difference is noticeable, and it shows you what is possible if you continue the practice. The short-term nature of the experiment makes it easier to stay committed. Telling yourself to change your self-talk forever can feel overwhelming, but 3 days feels doable. This manageable time frame reduces resistance and makes it more likely that you will actually follow through. And once you experience the benefits during those days, you naturally want to continue. Not because someone told you to, but because you feel the difference for yourself. The small commitment becomes a gateway to lasting change. Ultimately, this 3-day test proves that transformation begins with small, consistent actions. It shows that you don't have to wait months or years to see results. Your mind responds quickly to the words you feed it. By the end of the 3rd day, you realize that self-talk is not just background noise, but a tool you can use to shape your mood, your actions, and your outlook. What starts as a short experiment becomes evidence that kindness toward yourself is not just comforting, it is powerful, practical, and deeply necessary.